All right. Ready to unlock some serious creative potential.
Always.
Today, we're diving deep into Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic,
Oh, nice.
a book that's all about embracing your creative self.
I like it.
And you've given us a fantastic collection of articles, book summaries, reviews,
Oh.
even some blog posts. Looks like someone's been on a creativity quest.
Yeah, creativity is definitely having a moment.
It really is.
So what's the mission for our deep dive today?
Our mission today, we're going to distill the essence of Big Magic
Okay.
and hopefully inspire you to tap into your own creative superpowers.
I love that.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen in these sources,
Yeah.
big magic isn't just about inspiration striking like a bolt of lightning.
Right.
It's about recognizing the subtle ways creativity shows up in our lives every single day.
Ooh. I like where this is going, so tell me more about this everyday inspiration. What does
Okay.
that even look like?
Well, Gilbert has this fascinating idea
Yeah.
that the universe is constantly burying jewels within us.
Yeah.
These little sparks of creativity just waiting to be discovered.
Hmm.
But it's not enough to just wait for them to appear.
Right.
We have to actively seek them out.
Oh, interesting.
Think of it like a treasure hunt.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin to look for these jewels?
Well, they're often hidden in plain sight.
Okay.
Think about a time when a random conversation
Oh, yeah.
sparked a story idea,
Mm.
or a walk in nature gave you the perfect color palette for a painting.
Okay.
Those are the jewels Gilbert's talking about.
Right.
It's about tuning in to those moments
Yeah.
and recognizing them as creative gold.
I see what you mean. It's like suddenly becoming aware of all
Yeah.
these little whispers of inspiration that
As in-
we might have been ignoring before.
Yes, totally.
Mm.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Gilbert suggests that ideas themselves are like living entities,
Really?
almost like little creative spirits seeking someone to bring them to life.
Wait, so ideas are actually searching for us?
That's the idea.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so imagine ideas as these bundles of creative energy
Okay.
floating around looking for a home,
Right.
a mind that's open and ready to receive them.
Interesting.
Gilbert even uses the analogy of a radio transmitter and receiver.
Hmm.
If you're tuned to the right frequency, you'll start picking up on these creative signals.
That makes so much sense. It's like that feeling when you're suddenly struck by an idea that seems to come out of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it wasn't so random after all.
Yeah,
Maybe it was an idea finding me.
exactly.
Whoa.
And there's this thought-provoking piece in Sustainable Bliss
Okay.
that suggests if you don't act on an idea,
Yeah.
it might find a new home with someone else who's ready to bring it to life.
Wow, that's a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it?
It is,
It makes you want to pay closer attention
for sure.
to those flashes of inspiration and actually do something with them.
Absolutely. It definitely challenges us to be more proactive about nurturing our creative impulses.
I like that.
So the next time you get that feeling like you have to write something down,
Yeah.
sketch something out, or even just hum a melody, don't ignore it.
Right.
You might just be holding the key to unlocking an incredible idea.
Okay, so let's say we're starting to tune into those creative frequencies.
Right.
And we've got these ideas bubbling up,
Okay.
but then fear creeps in
Uh-oh.
and tries to shut it all down.
Yep.
How do we deal with that?
Right.
Because, let's be honest, fear is a pretty constant companion for most of us.
Gilbert is very upfront about that.
Okay.
She says fear is an ever-present part of the creative journey, but she also calls it boring.
Now, you might be thinking, how can fear be boring? It's terrifying.
Right.
Yeah, boring isn't exactly the first word that comes to mind when I think of fear.
But what Gilbert is getting at is that fear often shows up with the same tired script.
Okay.
That same voice in your head saying, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
What if you fail?
Right.
What will people think? It's a broken record of negativity that can keep us stuck in a rut.
So how do we break free from that fear-based rut?
That's the question.
Because Gilbert clearly isn't suggesting we just ignore it.
No, ignoring fear doesn't usually work.
Right.
But she does offer a powerful reframe.
Okay.
She asks, would you rather be a beautiful failure or a deficient success?
Interesting.
In other words, would you rather play it safe and never take a creative risk?
Hmm.
Or would you rather put yourself out there Embrace the possibility of failure
Yeah.
and create something truly meaningful,
Right.
even if it's imperfect.
I think what makes fear so paralyzing is that it often tricks us
Yeah.
into thinking that failure is the worst possible outcome.
Right.
But like Gilbert says, deficient success can be its own kind of prison.
Absolutely.
It's like achieving something but feeling empty inside because it wasn't really you expressing your authentic self.
Exactly.
Right.
And speaking of deficient success,
Yeah.
one of the biggest roadblocks to authentic creative expression is perfectionism.
Yes. Perfectionism, the ultimate creativity killer
Right.
that need to make everything flawless, polished, beyond reproach.
It's a trap.
It is, but the thing is, as several of these articles point out,
Huh?
nothing is ever truly beyond criticism.
So true.
No matter what you create, someone, somewhere, will find a way to pick it apart.
That's just the way it is.
It's so frustrating, but you're right.
But you know what? That's such a liberating realization.
It is.
Because it frees us from the impossible burden of trying to please everyone.
Okay, yeah.
It allows us to say, okay, this is my creation, this is my voice, and I'm putting it out there into the world, flaws and all.
It does take the pressure off.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of something I read in Sustainable Bliss.
Okay.
They said, staying in the game, even while failing, is more honorable than avoiding participation altogether.
I love that. It's like stumble, fall, get back up and create. Exactly.
It's so simple, but so powerful.
And that brings us to another powerful theme that runs through all of these sources.
Okay, what's that?
The idea that you don't need anyone's permission to be creative.
Yes. We can finally throw that whole myth about needing external validation out the window.
It's time.
You don't need a fancy degree, an agent, or a million followers to call yourself an artist or a writer or a musician.
You got it.
It's so freeing. Gilbert is very clear on this point.
Yeah.
She says, if you're alive, you're inherently creative. Full stop. No special qualifications required.
I like that.
And Sustainable Bliss adds a couple of really helpful reminders.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, most people are so caught up in their own lives
Right.
that they're not really paying attention to what you're creating.
Yeah.
At least not as much as you think they are.
That's so reassuring, right?
It is.
Because sometimes it feels like we're performing on this huge stage with everyone watching our every move.
I know that feeling.
It can be crippling.
And second, even though it might seem like everything's been done before,
Right.
remember, it hasn't been done by you.
Oh, I like that.
Your unique perspective, your individual voice, those are the ingredients
Yeah.
that make your creations original and valuable.
So we've got the ideas, we're facing our fears, and we've thrown out the need for permission.
Okay.
But what about that thing called motivation?
Yeah, motivation, that's a big one.
How do we keep that creative fire burning, especially when the initial excitement fades?
That's a great question.
Because we all know how that goes.
We do.
You start a project all excited and then, poof, the motivation disappears.
And one that Gilbert addresses head on.
Okay.
She makes a really important distinction between relying on fleeting passion
Yeah.
versus cultivating consistent curiosity.
Interesting. So is she saying that passion isn't enough to sustain us on the creative journey?
Well,
Because I've always heard follow your passion as the key to a fulfilling life.
right, but think of passion as a burst of energy.
Yeah.
That can ignite a project, but it can also fade just as quickly. What Gilbert advocates for is cultivating a more sustainable energy source. Curiosity.
So curiosity becomes like the fuel that keeps the creative engine running,
Exactly.
even when the initial spark of passion dies down.
Yes.
I
See,
see.
Sustainable Bliss puts it beautifully.
How so?
They say curiosity simply asks, is there anything you're interested in? And from there, it's about following those threads of interest.
Okay.
Letting your natural curiosity lead you to new discoveries and creative breakthroughs.
I love that.
It's simple, but profound.
Because curiosity is something we can tap into at any moment. It's not about waiting for inspiration to strike.
Right.
It's about actively engaging with the world, asking questions, and exploring new ideas.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
And Gilbert emphasizes that staying curious and persistent, even when you hit those inevitable roadblocks or feel like giving up,
Right?
is often what separates those who create from those who simply dream of creating.
So true.
It's about showing up even when it's hard.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but I have one more burning question.
Okay, good.
What about success?
Success.
Is that the ultimate goal?
Well,
Because let's be honest, we all want our work to be seen, appreciated, maybe even make a little impact on the world.
of course.
Right.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Gilbert seems to suggest a detachment from the pursuit of success as the primary goal.
Really? So we shouldn't be creating with the sole intention of becoming famous or making a lot of money.
It's not that those things are bad,
Right.
but Gilbert suggests that attaching our sense of worth to those external markers of success can actually hinder our creative expression.
So how do we measure success then?
Remember that quote from Big Magic? Done is better than good.
Oh, yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most important thing is to simply finish the project, to
Right.
get it out of our heads and into the world, even if it's not perfect.
I see. So it's more about the process than the outcome?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's often that sense of completion, that feeling of having brought something into existence
Yeah,
that fuels the desire to keep creating.
that makes a lot of sense.
It's about shifting the focus from the outcome to the process, from external validation to internal satisfaction.
I think it's also important to remember that creative success is often subjective and unpredictable.
Absolutely.
What one person considers a masterpiece, another person might completely dismiss.
That's art.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Totally.
It's all about finding your audience, those people who connect with your work on a deeper level.
Couldn't agree more.
And that's a beautiful reminder that ultimately,
Yes.
the most important measure of success is whether we're creating work that feels authentic to us, work that brings us joy and allows us to express our unique voice.
Well said.
Because even if our creative pursuits don't lead to fame and fortune,
Yeah.
the act of creating itself is a reward, a way to connect with something larger than ourselves.
And that brings us back to the idea of those jewels that Gilbert talks about.
Okay.
Those sparks of creativity that are buried within each of us.
Right.
If we can approach our creative work with a sense of curiosity and playfulness, with a willingness to detach from outcomes and simply enjoy the process,
Yeah.
we might be surprised by what we discover.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to become alchemists, transforming those raw materials of inspiration into something new and beautiful.
I love that image.
It's very powerful.
And who knows, in the process, we might just stumble upon a little bit of magic.
Well, before we head into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered so far.
Sounds good.
You've heard about Gilbert's ideas of the universe burying jewels within us, ideas seeking a willing partner, and the importance of facing our fears.
Okay.
But what's really standing out to you?
That's a good question.
What's resonating with your creative journey?
That's such an important question.
It-
And as you take a moment to ponder that,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this next piece of Big Magic wisdom.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Big Magic.
It's good to be back.
I hope you've had a chance to reflect on those initial insights about sparking creativity.
Yeah, it's been really thought-provoking.
Now, let's dig a bit deeper into a concept that comes up again and again
Okay.
in your source material.
Right.
One that can be a bit of a paradox
Oh.
for anyone trying to create something new, detaching from outcomes.
It sounds counterintuitive, right?
It can feel that way.
I mean, if we're putting all this time and energy into creating something,
Yeah.
of course we want it to be successful.
And that's perfectly natural.
It is.
But what these sources seem to be suggesting
Yeah.
is that fixating on a specific outcome,
Okay.
whether it's getting published, going viral, or winning awards,
Right.
can actually make the creative process less enjoyable
Really?
and even block the flow of creativity.
So how do we reconcile that desire for success
That's the challenge.
with this idea of detaching from outcomes?
Right.
Because I think that's a tension a lot of us feel.
One helpful way to think about it
Okay.
is to shift our focus from the end product to the process itself.
Interesting.
Sustainable Bliss makes this great point
Yeah.
about how when we put too much pressure on our work to achieve a certain result,
Right.
it can actually make it less enjoyable for both us and the audience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like trying to force the magic instead of letting it unfold naturally.
I know when I'm writing and I'm too focused on, will people like this? Will this get published?
Happens to the best of us.
It just makes the whole process feel so heavy and stressful.
Totally.
And the writing itself usually suffers as a result.
It's like you're trying to control something that needs to be free.
Yeah.
Gilbert even talks about how the pursuit of success can become a hindrance to the creative process.
Okay.
It can make us too self-conscious, too afraid to take risks or try new things.
It's like we're constantly second-guessing ourselves.
Yes.
Worried about making a mistake or not living up to some external standard.
And that's where that powerful quote from Big Magic comes in.
Yeah. Which one?
Done is better than good.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It's a reminder that sometimes
Yeah.
the most important thing is to simply finish the project.
Right.
To get it out of our heads and into the world,
Yeah.
even if it's not perfect.
Because sometimes that act of completion is what unlocks the next creative breakthrough.
Absolutely.
It's like we have to clear the mental space to make room for new ideas to flow in.
Exactly. And finishing a project also gives us something tangible to learn from.
Okay.
We can see what worked, what didn't,
Right.
and use that feedback to inform our future creative endeavors.
So, practically speaking, how do we start detaching from outcomes?
Good question.
Because it's one thing to say, don't worry about the result.
Right.
But it's another thing to actually put that into practice.
One technique is to set intention-based goals rather than outcome-based goals.
Interesting.
So instead of saying, I want to write a novel that becomes a bestseller, you might say, I want to dedicate an hour each day to writing and exploring my creativity.
That's a great reframe.
It is, isn't it?
Because it takes the pressure off of achieving a specific result and puts the focus on the daily practice of creating.
Right.
And honestly, that's something we have more control over anyway.
You're focusing on the things you can control.
Right.
Your effort, your dedication, your commitment to showing up for your creative practice and the outcome, whatever it may be, will unfold organically from those consistent actions.
I think it's also important to remember that creative success is often subjective and unpredictable.
Absolutely.
What one person considers a masterpiece, another person might completely dismiss.
That's just the nature of art.
And that's okay.
It is.
It's all about finding your audience, those people who connect with your work on a deeper level.
Finding your tribe.
Exactly.
And that's a beautiful reminder that ultimately the most important measure of success is whether we're creating work that feels authentic to us.
Okay.
Work that brings us joy and allows us to express our unique voice.
Because even if our creative pursuits don't lead to fame and fortune, the act of creating itself is a reward.
Totally.
A way to connect with something larger than ourselves.
And that brings us back to the idea of those jewels that Gilbert talks about.
Right.
Those sparks of creativity that are buried within each of us.
I like that analogy.
If we can approach our creative work with a sense of curiosity and playfulness, with a willingness to detach from outcomes and simply enjoy the process, we might be surprised by what we discover.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to become alchemists.
I love that.
Transforming those raw materials of inspiration into something new and beautiful.
And who knows? In the process, we might just stumble upon a little bit of magic.
Now, before we move into the final part of our exploration, let's take a moment to connect back to your personal creative journey.
Sounds good.
As we've been unpacking these ideas about detaching from outcomes and trusting the creative process, what's been stirring within you.
That's a good one to reflect on.
What creative project have you been putting off because you were too afraid of the outcome?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's amazing to think we've almost reached the end of our deep dive into Big Magic.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
It really does. We've covered so much ground.
Yeah, from those hidden jewels of inspiration.
Right, to taming our fears, detaching from outcomes. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Exploring what it really means to live a creative life.
And I think what's really striking about Gilbert's approach is that she emphasizes the intrinsic value of creativity. Regardless of whether it leads to external recognition or success.
It's like she's saying, create for the joy of creating.
Exactly.
Create because it expands your soul and connects you to something larger than yourself.
It's about the process, not the product.
Right.
And it's not just about the end product. It's about the transformative power of the creative process itself.
Right.
The way it stretches our imaginations, deepens our self-awareness, and allows us to tap into a flow state where time seems to disappear.
I love that idea of creativity as a pathway to a more enchanted way of being in the world.
It's magical, isn't it?
It really is. It's like we're inviting magic into our lives, allowing ourselves to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
And remember that idea from Sustainable Bliss?
Which one?
About ideas seeking a home.
Oh, yeah.
It suggests that we're not just creating in isolation.
Right.
We're actually part of this larger creative ecosystem where ideas are constantly flowing and seeking expression.
It's a bit humbling to think that we might be chosen as vessels for these creative sparks.
I know, right?
These whispers of inspiration that are constantly swirling around us.
It's a beautiful thought.
It makes you realize the responsibility we have to nurture those ideas.
Yeah.
And give them the best possible chance to flourish.
And that responsibility requires courage, doesn't it?
In a way, it does.
The courage to face our inner critics, to embrace vulnerability.
Yeah.
And to trust that the creative process will unfold in its own time and in its own way.
Because sometimes those whispers of inspiration are so fragile.
They are.
So easily extinguished by doubt and fear.
It's true.
And that's where Gilbert's reminder about beautiful failure comes in.
Oh, yeah. I love that concept.
It's about giving ourselves permission to experiment, to take risks, and to know that even if things don't turn out exactly as planned,
right,
there's still beauty and value in the attempt.
The journey is just as important as the destination.
And remember, courage isn't about being fearless.
No, not at all.
It's about feeling the fear and creating anyway.
It's about showing up even when it's scary.
It's about saying yes to the creative impulse, even when those voices of self-doubt are screaming no.
Exactly. And that yes can be as simple as picking up a pen and writing a few words.
Right. Or strumming a few chords on a guitar.
Or even just taking a few moments to daydream about a creative project you've been putting off.
Yeah. Every small step counts.
It all adds up.
It's about building momentum, one creative act at a time.
And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to silence those inner critics.
Right.
And tap into that wellspring of creativity that's within you.
Because, as Gilbert reminds us, if you're alive, you're inherently creative.
We all have that spark.
You have something unique and valuable to offer the world.
Don't be afraid to share it.
And sometimes all it takes is a little spark of inspiration.
Right.
A bit of courage. And a willingness to embrace the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately magical journey of creativity.
That's the beauty of it all.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into big magic.
It's been a pleasure.
And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly inspired.
Me too.
To nurture my own creative spirit.
I hope our listeners are feeling inspired as well.
We hope you, our listener, have gleaned some valuable insights and perhaps even a renewed sense of possibility about what you can create.
Remember, the world needs your creativity.
So go out there, embrace your big magic, and let your creative light shine.
Until next time, keep creating.
Keep creating.